just jump in at any point. I do have some slides. Let me start. Okay, the recording has started. And let me share the screen. Okay. So this is a relatively short presentation to talk a little bit about how we can engage in active learning when we're either in a bichronous or a HyFlex mode, because both of those types of teaching have become much more common. Just to get the terms consistent, at least. This term is not all that common, but it's probably the simplest description of what happens when you have some students in person and some students remote. As we're doing all these workshops, we have some people attending in classrooms and we have some people attending and participating from outside. I know ever since I've come back to face-to-face teaching, I think there have been maybe 3 or 4 days when all my students were physically in the room. The rest of the time, there's 1 or more students. And when I'm teaching a large class, sometimes up to 12 to 15, or sometimes even 20 students who are participating remotely. HyFlex is basically bichronous plus an option of being fully asynchronous. HyFlex teaching methods have become pretty standard in pretty much all of SUNY except for SUNY Oswego. I think there's some 40-some schools. When I did a quick search where I put SUNY in and HyFlex, that came up directly in the search, and there may well be more. But in any case, even though we've had some resistance from our faculty assembly, we have people teaching in a HyFlex mode. So with a HyFlex course, students have the choice of participating on any given class day, of participating in the classroom, participating remotely over Zoom or some other synchronous presentation, or working in an entirely asynchronous manner. It's pretty much like combining a fully asynchronous online class with a fully synchronous class, except students have the option of jumping back and forth. And that's a really challenging way to teach. And we'll talk about some of those restrictions as we go through this. The challenge basically is that if it's truly a HyFlex class, you never know how many people will be participating synchronously and how many people will be participating asynchronously. There's a lot you can do with students remote and in person at the same time, but when you bring active learning becomes more challenging when you also have some students participating in an asynchronous manner. And so we're going to focus just on the bichronous component because that's a little bit easier. Honestly, I wouldn't teach HyFlex because it limits the types of instructional activities you can do, particularly if you want to have some long-term persistent group activity. That becomes almost impossible when you teach in a HyFlex manner, because again, students can opt out of any synchronous activities. And with most group activities, you would want students participating synchronously in at least some of those things, at least for class presentations and so forth. So the main challenges, if you try to have students coming in remotely and present in person, is that when we're using the classroom technology, most of our classrooms don't have very good microphone arrays that will pick up all the voices in the room. If we're lucky, we're in a room where there's a web camera that's close to the instructor so that remote students can hear the instructor, but we don't really have the ability of transmitting voice from students out into, except I think in 1 or 2 rooms on campus, we don't really have that potential for students to be heard if they're in the classroom. Now, I've gotten around that a little bit by bringing my own microphones over in smaller classrooms, but even that, it's, students in the back of the room won't be heard very well. So that limits, again, some of the activities you can do, but there's still a lot that you can do. So one of the other problems, though, is if you don't know who is going to be out on any given day, it's hard to have group activity. It's easy to have group activities in the classroom where students physically meet. It's easy to have students online go into breakout rooms, But the problem is getting those voice communications going in both directions. If students remote have fairly decent microphones, their voice can come out in the classroom, but it goes to the whole class and isn't focused on specific groups of students. So if students are working in small groups, for example, and some of them are in person and some are remote, you can't really use Zoom or other techniques unless they work in chat in breakout rooms and all the students bring computers to have those direct communications. Now, students can text each other, they can use other techniques, but it does limit a lot what you can do in class. And again, you have potentially a different mix of students in person and remote every day, depending on who is sick, whose car broke down, who just had a broken leg and they can't get to campus. And I've had lots of those cases in the last couple of years. And so you get that challenge of having persistent groups. It also, if you're going to plan group activities where you're expecting a certain number of groups with a certain number of participants, that's really hard to arrange if you don't know how many people will be in each modality. You know, with a large class, when I teach a large class of 300 to 400 students, that's not that much of an issue because there's enough people in each modality typically so something can be done. But in classes of, 30, 40 or thereabouts, some days you might have 38 people in person and 2 remote. Other days you might have, 30 and 10, for example. And that can be a challenge. The other issue, and I think we all noticed this back when we went remote, and for those of us who've been teaching using Zoom for remote students, it does put a lot more cognitive load on the instructor trying to manage activities in both modalities. I found it almost impossible to do that well unless there's a second monitor in the room. With a second monitor, with practice, you can become fairly proficient at it, but it's really easy to lose track of comments coming in over Zoom when you're also addressing issues in the classroom. And it does pretty much tie you closer to the podium for at least part of the class, unless you tell remote students just to use their voice to signal that they have a question or concern. But 2 monitors makes it a lot easier. I was trying to teach a class for a couple of weeks where I only had 1 monitor to the room, and then I started bringing a second monitor of my own over, and then eventually CTS installed one. And I was having issues where students who were remote would start sending a direct message to me, and when there's only 1 monitor, if I open that message while it's also displayed on the projector in the screen, that could very well be, revealing information that the student sending a direct message to me might not want revealed to the entire in-person class. And so that became a bit more of a challenge until, again, I have a little portable monitor here that I brought over until, again, eventually CTS installed another monitor. And I'm hoping we see more of those. Just last week at the CIT conference here on campus, Flower Darby gave an opening presentation, and she noted that one of the things they've done at the University of Missouri was they've made all of their classrooms Zoom classrooms with microphone arrays, second monitors, and so forth, which makes it a lot easier. And many campuses have done that. I know Judy Littlejohn at GCC noted they had done that in all their classrooms during the pandemic, so they were pretty ready for this when they came back. But there's still some challenges there. I mentioned few classrooms have 2 monitors. And then if you have a HyFlex modality, some days you might have most students doing asynchronous work. Other days you might have everyone doing synchronous work. And that really makes it hard to plan activities, or at least activities that, that involve group activity or that involve group interactions. There are some things, though, that work when students are either in person or remote. One thing that works really well, and this I ramped up quite a bit since the pandemic, is the use of polling. Because if you're using, for example, iClicker, which we have access, which we currently have a site license for on campus, students in the classroom can respond to polls, students remote can respond to polls, and all the results get in, they're aggregated. If you're grading their responses, they go directly into the grade book, and it doesn't really matter whether the students are in person or are remote. So that's something that works pretty well. And then again, if you're going to have them do some peer instruction, you can do that pretty easily. Again, if you have a sufficient number of people in person and so forth, you could send them, again, if you don't have persistent groups, you can arrange for groups of 2 or 3 or 4 in both breakout rooms, where you can just randomly assign students to breakout rooms who are attending remotely, and just randomly have people in class, work with small groups with people around them. Certainly, games like Kahoot or Jeopardy can work pretty well. Again, using polling activities, which could be done with polling software, or with Google Forms, you can do exit tickets at the end of class, where you ask students, what they found challenging, what they found, what they learned today. And, there's a whole bunch of these quick classroom assessment techniques, sometimes called exit tickets, muddiest points, or 1-minute quizzes, which literally only take a minute or so. And you can put a QR code up on the screen, or you can drop it into chat, and students can respond with their smartphones, regardless of whether they're in person or remote. You can, again, do think, pair, share activities, as long as you have, an even number of people in both modalities, or if you don't, you can just have one group of 3. You can also have students interact with virtual whiteboards, things like Google's Jamboard, or there's a whole series of other whiteboards out there that are either free or relatively inexpensive, where you drop the URL in chat, or you put a QR code so that students who are attending in person can just hold their camera up, scan it, and go directly to that whiteboard. If you're using Jamboard, and it's the first time students have done this, they'll have to install the app. But once they've done that first time, from then on, they can just get directly to it. But certainly, if they're working on a computer, they don't need to install any sort of an app. Another thing you can do is, if students are working in small groups, as long as they don't have to actually talk in real time to each other, you could have them do some work together in Google Docs, Google Slides, or Google Sheets, where they're using text chat while they're also working simultaneously in a document. That's a technique I've used actually several times when I've been working with people, on papers or projects or other things, when one of us is in a noisy environment, or where there's family members around and they're watching TV or doing something else. You can still work there and chat and send messages back and forth and jointly edit documents. It's one of the really nice things about the whole Google Suite, that you do have that ability for students to collaborate in real time, and for faculty, for that matter, to collaborate in real time. You can also use Slack or other communication tools. Some people have been using Discord. Slack and Discord are probably 2 of the biggest ones, but some students regularly are using GroupMe. It facilitates academic dishonesty quite nicely, but it also can be used as a positive tool, where if there's a class GroupMe, they can send messages back and forth and so forth. One thing you can do, and it really doesn't work that well though, because in practice, it pretty much breaks down. If everyone uses Zoom and wears headphones or earbuds and so forth, in principle, at least, you should be able to have people talking back and forth. But if you have a lot of students in the classroom doing this, if one person forgets their headphones, and you get that feedback effect, which gets really annoying. And I've never been able to do that with a group very successfully. And as you presented last week in a different context, there's always fishbowl type activities. I know you were talking about the restorative practices one, but you can use the more typical classroom fishbowl techniques, where well, it's not exactly the same thing, but in my capstone course, every week I had students presenting summaries of journal articles or working papers on topics, where each week, each group was responsive. This was a 3-hour class, which made it a little bit easier in terms of coordination, because when it only meets once a week, it's a little bit easier to deal with issues of students moving between modalities. But in any case, I had students present, and whoever wasn't there in person was just on screen, on Zoom. And it didn't really matter that much whether they were presenting in person or on Zoom. And similarly, when they were asking questions to each other, it didn't matter that much whether the people were discussing things remotely or in person. And that tended to be pretty seamless once they got used to it and learned how to unmute their mics and select the appropriate device for the microphone. Again, so group presentations can work pretty well. And also small group workshopping of creative work that can be quickly evaluated can be done. For example, I know Rebecca does that with websites and so forth. When students create something, they can still do some workshopping on it in small groups, which again, could be facilitated with text chat or something similar. But a lot of the things that has really worked, or a lot of the things that we often do in terms of active learning, really works best if everyone's in the same modality, whether they're all remote or whether they're all in person. And I did put together a Jamboard. I had done this presentation before, and this was a Jamboard, and I don't think many people actually attended then either. So in any case, there's a Jamboard if you would like to put something there. But that's pretty much all I got. So let's open this to any discussion. Let me stop the share. What are your thoughts, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like through most of the pandemic, I taught face-to-face, but let students come in synchronously too. And I didn't do 2 monitors, but I had my laptop and the computer, and it was a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
And the sound were a big problem. I actually came today because I'm doing one of my classes for the fall is face-to-face or asynchronous. So I was actually thinking of using like Hypothesis, I think would be good because students can go in. And I was, just looking to see hoping to see what else might help. But I think the Google Slides and Google Doc, what you were talking about, even not with text enabled, like they could work on that asynchronously too, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes, and that would work in HyFlex. I was focusing more on the asynchronous part, but that can work. And in fact, most of the work my students did in their group projects was done asynchronously. They get together and divide up their task, over Zoom or something, and then they'd work on their own parts, and then they'd meet to go over it and polish it as a group. But that can all be done asynchronously, or the small groups can get together and work on it.
Right.
At times that's convenient for all of them.
Yeah.
Hypothesis I didn't mention because I've used it primarily as an asynchronous activity, where it was asynchronous for everybody. So I've used that. I did use that in the capstone course, but I had them do these readings each week, because while they were presenting one paper, I wanted to make sure they actually read all the papers that were being discussed, and putting it in Hypothesis and having them annotate them is a really good way to make sure that students actually read the papers.
Yeah.
And it led to much better discussions.
Yeah, I do the same thing actually in my face-to-face classes. Like I gave them a choice of 2 readings each week, and then they had to, and generally they kind of divided half and half. This way they could come in and talk about, but I had them do it like on their own, do that activity asynchronously. So.
Yeah, Hypothesis is great for that.
Yeah. I have to go back and look at I did the clicker training over the winter breakout, and I know I set up an account, but I think I'm actually going to use it in the fall. So I have to go back and refresh my memory about that one.
Students love that generally. They get tired. I do it so much, they do get a little tired of it, and I do have to vary that up more than I do. But it brings them back to attention. It gets them to focus on things. And once they commit to answering something, they want to, you know, what, if it's a question where there is correct answers, that's not the only use of this, but if there really is a correct answer for something, they want to know what it is. And
Yeah.
it evokes curiosity, and, you know, it brings them right back to focus if attention has started to wander a bit.
Yeah. I never taught one here. I taught one at the University of Washington. I have a 150 person class in the fall. So I think the polling is going to be really important, and for attendance too. I think I can use it. So
You can, I wouldn't advertise it as being for that purpose, but that is one of the side effects of it, that if they're being scored on their participation, and you have options, you could score them just on whether or not they answer questions. And it could be just if they answer a certain number of questions, and the choices are, you can give them a certain number of points if they answer all the questions, all but one, or 3/4, or a half, or at least one. So you get to choose that. And, you know, that's a way that many people would do it. Just essentially you're getting attendance, but you're not scoring them on attendance. It's technically for participating in that learning activity.
right. Yeah, no, I mean, I thought there was a way to actually even take attendance with the,
You can, but yeah,
it doesn't work so
but
well.
basically if they answer any questions,
Right,
gets
that is
taken
the,
away.
yeah,
And you know, if you just require that they answer it and there's nothing, and you're not grading whether it's correct or not, it's kind of automatically doing it, but they're still doing something that's learning. The issue with taking attendance was more serious back when students had to pay up to like $40 or $45 to buy a clicker.
oh, right, yeah,
Because we had some instructors who had students pay $40 or $45, and the only thing they used it for was taking attendance. And students were not very happy about having to pay for something just so the instructor could keep track of whether they were in class or not.
right. Yeah, that sucks.
Um,
No, this will be
yeah.
it's a current events based class, so they'll be like,
Oh, yeah.
that's what I plan to use the polling for, and it'll be right answers, you know, they'll be correct answers, so.
Mhm.
Which is rare in political science.
And for issues where there may not be right answers, you could still you could have students vote on something in terms of what their opinion is of it. Then you could discuss it in class and then do it again and see if their votes have changed after.
Right.
And then talk about why their votes may have changed and what, you know, what they found convincing. There's a lot of ways in which you can do it that would not necessarily require you to assign correct answers or not. But yeah, if you're just testing on what has happened and so forth, or, you know, what the outcomes were, then, you know, you can just do it that way. And the common practice is to give a certain number of points for any answer and then more for a correct answer, you know, especially if you're asking more relatively challenging questions.
Right.
But yeah, and it will generate an attendance report, and you can set it up that way, and then you'll see which days they attended, which days they didn't. But and I don't know if you can get that directly into Brightspace. Usually it's the total points that come into Brightspace.
Okay. Yeah, I just need a way to go back. Like, I get, after the first like 3 weeks, I get really, once I know everyone, I get really bad at taking attendance. And then if someone withdraws, they always want to know what's the last attend date. And I'm like, well, geez, I don't know.
Well, the clickers, I use that all the time. Well, there's two things I use for it. One is that, and the other is a Brightspace report of the last time they logged in, or at least for online.
Right.
classes.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Yeah. So, all right.
So any other thoughts on how to work with students in both modalities, since you're going to be doing it? Well, or you're doing something that's closer to HyFlex. Just don't call it that way.
It's what?
Just don't call it HyFlex, since we don't have that official category.
Honestly, I'm so frustrated now that that policy didn't pass, because I mean, I'm doing it because, I mean, for a few reasons, but it would have been so much easier if I could have just had a HyFlex section. Instead, I have two sections that now I have to merge, you know, into one. But yeah, I don't know the things that worked when I did the synchronous and when I was doing the bichronous.
Bichronous, yeah.
The bichronous. I was also like, there were some days that were like asynchronous in there, right? So like it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. On Monday, they had to watch a movie or watch a documentary or read an article. And then I put up a Google form to have them put up their answers. And then it was good because I was able to review that before class on Wednesday when we would discuss it. So I could, I was able to kind of clear up questions and, so that worked well, although I don't think that would work for what I'm doing in the fall. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, mostly I really am at the point in my life where I really just like discussion boards. And so,
Yeah,
but
me too. I
yeah,
think anyone who's used them more than a couple of times really gets tired of them.
yeah, but I do like hypothesis for something similar. So,
One thing that made my discussion boards a bit better 7 or 8 years ago, I think it was now, was requiring the post first option. Because when you
yeah,
let students see what other people wrote, they were all the same. They were just reiterating what the first person had said. I
right.
way back, well, 12, 13, 14 years, I was using discussion boards in my class of 400, which was just a little bit insane. And I had to stop it because it was taking 30, 40 hours just to briefly peruse that and to assign scores. But what happened was I broke them up into 20 groups of 20. And what was really interesting is I'd go through them one group at a time, painfully at times. But what
Uh-huh.
would happen is that the first person to post the first week or two said something thoughtful, all the other ones tended to be more thoughtful and more substantive. If the first person to post in the group just threw out something really superficial, all of the follow-up ones tended to be really superficial. And that was what prompted me to switch to the post first, because then students don't have that priming. But it was
Yeah,
amazing to watch. There'd be one discussion board where people would have really good discussions going on, and others where it was just the worst non-substantive material you could possibly imagine. And it was all based on who the first person or two were to post in the group. And it set the tone for the whole semester. I talked to them about it. It didn't make a difference. It was remarkable.
huh.
But
Wow. The other thing I think I made, not for my big class, but for my, I'll call it HyFlex. I've been playing a lot around with GIS in my
oh yeah.
classes. And the other thing that I was thinking of doing was, because they have to get data about a particular thing, like this, in this case, it's like an energy policy class. And so, I mean, Google Sheets actually has like a baby GIS program built into it. And so I was thinking of having that be one of the assignments where they could collaborate together on getting the data, like finding it, like, verifying it from other sources or seeing where the sources differ from each other, and kind of like, cleaning up the data, making sure everything is aligned properly to be able to have the map generate. So
It'd be really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I had said this. I can't remember if this might have been in one of the other workshops, not in a spring breakout, but you know how it's always so hard to get students to like ask good questions when they're doing research. So finally I was like, okay, for African politics a few years ago, I'm like, I'm just going to do a GIS assignment because I want them to, mapping is important and it's really hard. There's so many countries in Africa and it's really, it helps if you know who the neighboring countries are when you're trying to figure out the politics. And I thought a mapping thing would be good. And the totally unanticipated side effect of that was, once they made a map of something, it was like any topic that they were interested in, they asked amazing questions about like, why is it, why does it look this way, or why does it have, or why is it this way here but not this way there? And so yeah, I'm trying to do more GIS stuff in my classes.
At CIT, there was a presentation with someone from, I think it was Portland, but they were using data from Syracuse from the 1930s, looking at GIS data in terms of income, in terms of school outcomes, a whole series of things that was looking mostly at the racial breakdown of different areas and how that affected income distribution. And I don't remember I just skimmed at it, but it was, there's so much you can do with that.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I was sorry I missed the CIT conference. I mean, we had a vacation. We brought the kids to space camp. It was fun.
Vacations are nice.
But yeah, I'm glad I hope it went well.
It did. It went really smoothly.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
kind of the end of my ideas.
Okay. Well, if you have any others, good
Okay,
luck.
and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got to do more. I've got to vary up my class a bit more in the large class, and but again, it is challenging where some of the students are remote, and there's always some students out sick when you have 300 or 400 students, and they've gotten used to being able to participate remotely, and it's hard for me to say you can't join in remotely when we have the equipment to do it. But
Yeah. I mean, honestly, last semester, I didn't even offer it as an option. I just used Panopto when I was recording all the classes. And if they were sick, I just said, well, you know
Watch the
where it
video.
is. Here's because it's so hard to manage. And it's so much work to plan. I mean, really to do all the it's a lot of work to try to plan like the groups and who's gonna. It worked out well when I was doing it during the pandemic because there were so few classes courses running on campus that when I broke them into groups, I would just send them to different classrooms because there was no one there.
Yeah.
But that's not happening now.
Yeah.
I didn't think about the earphone things. That probably would have worked too.
It would work well though. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
because someone will not have it connected. It'll go through the speakers and you get that squeal from the feedback, or the echo. I've never seen, even in groups of faculty, I've never seen it work well,
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Okay. Well, good seeing you.
Good to see you too. Take care.
You too.